What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here, bright and early on a Saturday. It is February the 15th, just an enormous slate of college basketball. Today, we are going to get into it. Let's waste no time. Just very brief recap of what happened on Friday night. Only Big Ten matchup, UCLA travels to Indiana. They end up getting sort of the monkey off their back on the road. First time they've won in a time zone east of them in conference play. Indiana continues to basically have one good game and then four horrible games. So basically is what it is with Indiana. We showed value on UCLA. I did not have the courage to take it. Just nice to see, I guess. From there, St. Louis, another one where we showed value on them, and exact opposite of the previous game. Very scared by their recent play, did not take it, ended up being right on that, even though the model showed value on Loyola. Chicago, just a little bit, but I personally like St. Louis. That team just been a big disappointment with Avila, Jimerson, Swope not living up to expectations. It appears the jump to the A-10 a little too much for those Indiana State players. From there, we talked about the Columbia game. Everything in that came down to injuries. Columbia's best player missed again. Dartmouth covers. And last, UW-Milwaukee, incredible game that went to overtime. They win 88-80, so of course that screams over. That'll happen in a lot of OT games. But Milwaukee ends up covering a spread in OT, which is kind of crazy. That ended up closing at 6. But today's game obviously is highlighted by the SEC clash, Auburn and Alabama, number 1 versus number 2. And that's exactly where we are going to begin. I'll bring you behind the glass for this game. First thing, well, I'll put this right there. We will talk about gambling on the show, as you probably already have noticed if you're new. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. You must be 21 or older to play in most areas. All right, so this game is arguably the game of the year, at least in conference play to this point. Auburn has to hit the road, taking on Alabama. The spread in the game has ballooned to 2.5 points in favor of the Tide, and we have just an absolutely astronomical 172 total. If you're not watching this game on a Saturday afternoon, you got to figure out something in your life to create extra time for this. Stylistically, it's going to be a clash of really just strengths across the board. Injuries, Alabama dealing with Darian Reed. I think he's going to return in this spot. Latrell Wright's out for the year. Auburn comes in this game fairly healthy. You could include Janai Broome in this. He's been banged up all season long. You'll see him limping across the court. I didn't include him. Don't think he's in any danger of missing this game. Resume-wise, Auburn has the best resume in the country, in my opinion. They have 4 top 10 wins. 2 of their losses are to top 10 opponents. Those came against Florida and Duke. That's the number 4 team in the country, number 2 team in the country. Both of them were single digits. Just for reference, anytime I'm ranking teams, these are power rankings, not whatever nonsense the AP is putting out. So just 2 incredible losses, if you want to call them that. Alabama's resume is slightly shakier. They have 3 losses. Purdue at number 8, Oregon at 36. That was way back in Vegas. And 20 Ole Miss. They actually only have 1 top 10 win based on power rankings that came against Houston in overtime. So maybe a little shakier resume-wise, but let's dive into stylistic. Obviously, home court. This is going to be a crazy environment. And you are paying, if you're backing Bama, you're paying like a tax on the home court already that is being factored in more than what you normally would, which is something that's easily quantifiable. But in this game, first thing you got to do if you're Bama is slow down Janai Broome. That is much easier said than done, but I will say as a team, Alabama's rim protection is vastly improved this year with Cliff Amore coming in. He's doing almost nothing on the offensive end, and he's playing limited minutes. But that's sort of a good thing in and of itself because you have Mo Diabate, Jaren Stevenson, bodies in the front court that allow you to play multiple players, keep them fresh, fouls not really an issue because of the depth, and maybe even Reed returns in this game, which would give you an extra front court player. From there, you need to outshoot Auburn. Again, easier said than done. But Alabama is 13th in effective field goal percentage. The big hiccup for them in some of their losses has been that 3-point percentage, which is lagging behind some previous seasons. They're at 134th. Losing Wrightsell was a big hit to their shooting. Only Aiden Holloway is above 40% from beyond the arc. Mark Sears is down about 7%. Last year, he was hitting almost 44% of his three-pointers. He's down to just under 36 this year. I will say that has positively regressed in recent games, but there's a push-pull here. Now you have to face Auburn's 30th ranked perimeter defense. So do we really expect a lot of positive regression for him in a very tough matchup? It's tough to say. On the Auburn side, his team has a lot of advantages. It's actually pretty crazy how good they're shooting the ball. I mean, they're 19th in effective field goal percentage, 36 in three-point percentage. And part of the problem playing an Auburn team is just like the depth, man, like Todd Pettiford, Miles Kelly, Denver Jones, all over 40% from three. Chad Baker-Mazara is not far behind. Now, Alabama is awesome in perimeter defense. This team is 13th. They're ahead of Auburn, actually, in perimeter defense. Their guards are athletic. They're actually pretty young, too. So it's definitely not going to be easy to get off shots, but your floor spacing is just so nice when you have like Chaney Johnson inside and Janai Broome and these players that can actually stretch the floor. I will say on paper, Alabama does have some peripheral advantages. Alabama draws more fouls by a wide margin. But I think this is kind of Auburn can play aggressively. They're afforded this because of their depth. So I'm not even sure if Auburn really cares that much, as long as it's not like Janai Broome or something. Last thing, Alabama is 5th in effective height. They do have a slight advantage in the glass here. Not a lot of teams with that over Auburn. Turnover margin favors Auburn in this game, but that's just kind of because Alabama has played reckless at times. I will say, last 3 games for Alabama, they have turned it over 14 times at least in each of those games. Carrying the ball up the court has been an issue for this team plenty of times throughout the year. Even with home court factored in, I think this game should be closer to a pick-em. I'm very nervous just playing Auburn on the road in this crazy environment that is going to be Tuscaloosa today. And I knew this was probably going to move Alabama's direction, which it has. Right now, basically, I'm just kind of waiting out, seeing if late money comes in on Alabama more. If this gets to like +3, I'm just going to auto-fire. And I would say there's a pretty good chance I just flat out take the +2.5 in this spot. Crazy game. I'm a little surprised, as you can see on the screen. We make this basically a pick-em. Second game up. And holy smokes. This would be the best game on the slate on a ton of different days. Most Saturdays. Houston takes on Arizona. Basically the top of the Big 12 showing down. This game has a 2-point spread in favor of Houston currently. It's bounced all over the place a little bit. Houston was as low as a pick-em last night. As high as 2.5. Totals 137. A little bit of sticker shock on a Houston total in that context, but they're on the road. This game has no major injuries at this point. Houston's been banged up plenty, but they should be much healthier. Both LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp have returned, and they played in their most recent game. That was kind of just, I think, a precaution, playing a really easy schedule last week in anticipation of this. And on the Arizona side, Trey Townsend should be back. He's over 10 days removed from his concussion. He returned to practice. More on him in a second. Resume-wise, Houston is 2-3 against top 30 opponents, which may surprise some people. They're not actually quite as strong up top resume-wise as you might think. They beat number 10 Kansas. That took double OT. They had a 1% post-game win expectancy in that contest, and then they just kind of banged up on a Baylor team that didn't have their center. When Baylor doesn't have their center, they're essentially playing 5 guards. Norchad Homir is at the 5 for them. It's pretty wild. As far as losses go for Houston, 3 of the 4 came in the top 10, so that's all well and good. Their only bad loss, if you want to call it that, is a 50-ranked San Diego State, who's sort of fallen a little bit. Overall, I think Arizona has the stronger schedule, but the weaker body of work. And what I mean by that is they've just taken more bad L's, and their top 10 wins are comparable to Houston's. They've lost 3 times outside the top 40. They only have 2 top 10 wins. That was Texas Tech and Iowa State. And remember, the Iowa State game required Caleb Love's like 68-foot half-court launch to even get to overtime. So it's a pretty questionable body of work up top for Arizona. Losses, I mean, there's plenty. I won't get into them specifically. As far as efficiency goes, I think Houston basically has efficiency edges across the board. Obviously, the road trip is not easy, but man, like, let's get into this. Inside, Houston plays a semi-smaller lineup than Arizona, but they have Jawan Roberts and Tugler. That team is number 3 in interior defense. They basically erase the rim. They're the most aggressive rebounding team in the country, at least up there with teams like Texas A&M And I'm going to throw UW Milwaukee in there for those of you Horizon watchers. But anyway, that's way, way lower in competition. And that's going to be a problem against Arizona, who's kind of one-dimensional. This team absolutely cannot shoot. This is a brutal matchup for them on the glass. It's a brutal matchup inside. Just what they do from beyond the arc, they're 273 in three-point percentage. Caleb Love has been a disaster in most games behind the arc. He's much better getting to the rim, but that's exactly the problem with this matchup. That's where Houston excels on defense. And unlike previous Houston teams, like even last year, 2-3 years ago, Houston was a horrible shooting team. This team would just live on the offensive glass, and they would live dangerously. But this year, this team is sixth nationally, number 6 in three-point percentage. Imagine saying that about last year's Houston team. LJ Cryer, Milos Uzan, Terrence Arsenault, Emmanuel Sharp are all shooting 39% or better from three. And even players coming off the bench like Malik Wilson is shooting 44% in the event that there's foul trouble or he needs to just play for a tired or banged up player. Turnover margin vastly favors Houston. The only real problem is their foul margin, and that's been a problem for them year over year. But the real difference this year is they're deeper. So at guard, we're just talking about like Malik Wilson shooting 44% off the bench. He's probably going to play like 6 minutes today. Arsenault has become a legitimate contributor for this team. Maybe you think their front court is a bit more of an issue. I kind of think so, but Javier Francis played 51% of their minutes last year. He's basically playing 10 minutes a game this year. It's not the worst thing to have him play in a pinch. So Houston's deeper, they're more physical, they're better inside, they're a racing two-point shooting really across the board. They won't let you get to the rim. And this Arizona team can't shoot. And conversely, Houston is now the 6th ranked shooting team in the country. We make this well outside the -1, -2 you can find. I played this myself at -1 last night. And I also took an under on Toby Awaka, 7.5 points. I don't remember the juice exactly, but it's juiced favorably. So that's one I think you can play. Trey Townsend coming back definitely affects him playing the 4. Let's go to the Big Ten, where we have another monumental matchup. Wisconsin takes on Purdue on the road. What a crazy slate of games. This is a 5.5-point spread in favor of Purdue. The total is 150.5. No major injuries. This Purdue has taken money, and the total is screamed up. It actually opened at 147, which I live in Wisconsin. It's tough to get some of the opening lines with limited availability. It opened at 149 for me. I hesitated, went up another 1.5, but more on that in a second. Stylistically, both of these teams play pretty tall lineups and hit the glass. There aren't a lot of micro advantages in either one of those categories. So to me, this comes down to guard play. I guess let's go back to the interior for 1 second, because there is one wrinkle. If you just look at the statistics, and I post a lot of these, actually I post all of these in Discord. If you were ever interested, they go much deeper than what you're seeing on the screen here. I tweet little like snippets of them, but yeah, we do projections from the game level, which you can see, but all the way down to the player level as well. That's how you get to the Awaka stuff. But if you were just looking at that little matchup chart on Twitter, Wisconsin versus Purdue, you might see Purdue ranked 291 in interior defense. It's kind of been a mess all year, but they did make a lineup change recently. Caleb Furst has been playing more minutes. He's 6'10", and he's the team's just best defender efficiency-wise. And he also allows Trey Kaufman-Renn to play the 4, which lines up a little bit better against Wisconsin's tall lineup when you're going to see Winter, Crowell, and Carter Gilmore on the inside. So I don't think Purdue is quite as bad as that 291 interior defense indicates. Back to the guards. Both teams are elite shooting the ball, but Purdue's a little better, and that's kind of just the story in this game. Purdue's just a little bit better everywhere. And to get to the shooting, they're 18th in effective shooting, 30th in three-point shooting. Wisconsin's 50th in effective shooting, 60th from 3. Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, CJ Cox, all hitting at least 39% of their threes this year, a couple over 40%. Lawyer's like approaching 47%. The one thing you could maybe say with Wisconsin, they are due for some positive shooting regression. A guy like Max Klesmit hit 40% of his threes last year. He's at 29%. And honestly, I'm starting to consider, does Wisconsin need to bench Max Klesmit? Kamari McGee off the bench has been awesome for this team. Let's do just the one-for-one Max Klesmit, Kamari McGee comparison. Kamari McGee, lower turnover rate, similar assist rate, and he is leading the country in three-point shooting. on 56 attempts, so take this with a grain of salt, but 55.4%. Klesmit's the veteran. Greg Gard has had a problem throughout his career deferring to elder leadership. But man, can we get Klesmit down to 25 minutes, McGee to 25 minutes rather than this 30-20 nonsense we've been seeing recently? I think it's warranted at this point. Anyway, on the margins, teams are pretty similar. Purdue slight edges in turnover and foul margin. And kind of just the bottom line here is that Purdue does everything Wisconsin does well, just a little bit better. As far as resume goes, both these teams had elite resumes, which makes this such an interesting game. No losses outside the top 30 for either team. Both teams have elite wins. Purdue beat Alabama. Wisconsin beat Arizona. Just an awesome, awesome game. As far as this contest, I can't take it. We show value on the Wisconsin side just slightly. We show value on the under just slightly. Again, my dumb brain, the IKB in me, likes Purdue stylistically against Wisconsin, likes both teams' ability to score. Pace is good in the game. Wisconsin playing uncharacteristically fast. It'll be a full stay away from me, but just make sure you got this game on your quad box and not an electric contest. Next up, Michigan State takes on Illinois, another Big Ten clash, a rematch, potential revenge game here for Illinois. Only injury, Tomislav Ivicic popped up on the injury report. I don't think he's in any danger of missing practice, so just at least worth mentioning. Illinois is a 6.5-point favorite. The total is 156.5. A little bit of sticker shock on this after seeing Michigan State take the first matchup 80-78. That was in their home building, of course. That was a horrible referee game. If you guys remember back, that was the Yakusonis foul game. He fouled out in 8 minutes. And I'll tell you this. I mean, you guys already know this. He didn't actually commit those fouls, not all of them at least. Hate when refs take the game in their own hands and remove the best players. Even from just a viewing experience. I didn't even have money on that game. But I was watching it. It was a Sunday, I believe. It's like, all right, I would really like to see Illinois' best player play, but you took him out. Anyway, resume-wise, much has been made over Michigan State's cupcake Big Ten schedule to this point. They're starting to get to the gauntlet. Resume-wise, I'm just going to say it. This team has two top 30 wins all year. The Illinois game, where Yakusonis only was allowed to play 8 minutes by the referees, and 29 Ohio State, right on the fringe of the top 30. They've lost to Memphis, UCLA, Indiana. All those teams are outside the top 40. Indiana just lost to UCLA last night. Those are bad losses. Illinois has 4 losses outside the top 40 as well, so we need to be fair. They lost to Northwestern, USC, Rutgers, and Nebraska. 2 of those games did come at full strength, but that also leaves 2 games with no excuse. As far as stylistics go, both these teams play really tall lineups. Both these teams rank top 3 in rebounding. Crazy matchup. Both these teams are horrible at shootings. I mean, on the rebounding, they definitely have the opportunities when you're so bad at shooting. Michigan State is 352nd in three-point percentage. It is a bottom 15 team shooting the ball. Illinois is not a whole lot better. They're 285th. To this point, the only difference has been Illinois hasn't seemed to recognize their inability to shoot. Michigan State has. Michigan State is 321st in three-point rate, so credit to Izzo there. He knows they can't shoot, and he's not trying. Not the case with Illinois. With that said, I kind of think there's been a mandate from coaching. In their last 2 games, they've taken 16 and 23 three-pointers. That's down significantly from their season-long numbers. And it doesn't take an expert to realize our shots aren't going in. We need to do something different. We have Ivicic. We have Yakusonis. Pretty athletic guards, too. And that's benefited them. Illinois is better peripherally, and I think they've made some changes for the better with their roster. I don't think Michigan State has. They're still playing Kane Carr, Carson Cooper, Frankie Fiddler, Xavier Booker, Simon Zapala. All those players rank outside the top 70 in total efficiency in the Big Ten Conference, but Izzo's still giving them significant minutes. I don't know what it is with this. He likes playing a long, deep rotation. It just doesn't make sense. It's changed a little bit in their most recent games. Some of that, I think, because of illness or injury. I'm not sure what happened with that, but I do remember there was a player absent, which has allowed Jaden Akins and Jace Richardson to play over 30 minutes in their last couple games. I have no confidence this is going to continue. Izzo just will not play his guys max minutes. With all this said, the line is just, you're paying a tax on Michigan or on Illinois in this spot playing at home. We actually make this closer to a -5, as you can see on the screen. I still can't bet Michigan State. Going back to just preseason takes, Illinois was a team I was buying. Michigan State was a team I was heavy selling. Just two volatile teams at this point that can't shoot the ball. We'll see how this goes. A lot of the bet on either side, if you were to take it, comes down to the ability to adjust on the fly. Neither team has been great at this season. So we'll full pass on the game. If you force me to play it, it would be Michigan State. I just do not have the heart for it. Back to SEC country, maybe a bigger game on paper, but I'm still going to include it here. Kentucky, Texas, it's a 3-point spread in favor of Texas, 159 total. The key to the game is injuries. Lamont Butler, Jackson Robinson reportedly dealing with serious injuries, according to their head coach. Kirk Reese has obviously been out for a while. Texas injuries, Devin Pryor, Chendall Weaver. Nothing really to see there. Those aren't new. But Kentucky has somehow played through injuries throughout most of the year. They've got 2 Tennessee wins through injuries. But, man, Lamont Butler being out is huge for this team. He's one of their best scorers. He is their best guard defender. He's their point guard. And with Kirk Reese also out, you now have to basically take a shooting guard and Otega Owe and play him at point guard. That's not worked for them in some spots, like it has in others. Now, Kentucky has an awesome resume. Despite their injuries, they have 7 top 25 wins, but this comes and goes. Their efficiency has dropped in plenty of games. They do have losses to number 27 Clemson, 39 Georgia, 46 Vanderbilt, and 41 Arkansas. However, Texas's resume is worse, and they have 2 of the same losses. They lost Arkansas and Vanderbilt. They only have 2 top 20 wins all year, Missouri and Texas A&M, and they only have 5 wins in the top 100 all season long. Frankly, I'm surprised Texas is this high in efficiency metrics. This team has 2 good players, Trey Johnson and Arthur Kaluma. I guess Caden Shedrick is decent because he can defend. But, man, how much are these Kentucky injuries worth is really the question in this game. Because Texas, I mean, I'm just not buying this team at all. They are superior defensively. That's not saying a ton. The one defensive change Kentucky's made that has made a difference is playing Amari Williams more minutes, and that helps on the interior. Lamont Butler leaves a lot of problems for this guard play. But they were 233rd in the interior defense. They've been much better with Williams. From there, Texas is shorter than Kentucky. They're worse at rebounding than Kentucky. They're inferior at shooting than Kentucky. Yeah, all of this comes down to how much do you think the players are worth. Right now, we have an adjusted spread for injuries, and we come in pretty close to the 3. I will say, I think there's a chance we might be overvaluing this. Kentucky is a pretty deep team. I don't see Texas being a legitimate threat in this conference, and I personally power rate them a little lower than the rankings that we're using for it. Like, the model doesn't take any of my biases into consideration. I personally have a bias against Texas. I would power rate them lower myself. So I'm interested in the Kentucky +3. I would debate this if it continues to move, but right now it's a stay away. The injuries are terrifying. A couple more games. Another SEC clash. We have Mississippi State taking on Ole Miss. Spread is 4 points in favor of Ole Miss. The total is 147. No major injuries in the game. Matt Murrell's probably going to pop up on the injury report before the game starts. Mississippi State's on a little bit of a skid. They've lost 6 of their last 9 games. However, one of their wins did come against Ole Miss. That was in overtime by a score of 84-81. They were at home. That's also their best win by a wide margin. Ole Miss is a top 20 team. Their second best win is probably against either SMU or Georgia. Both those teams are fringe top 40. Ole Miss is just way steadier. This team has only lost outside the top 20 to Mississippi State that we already talked about and Memphis. A lot of higher end wins. Alabama, Kentucky, Texas. I guess Mississippi State's best path to a victory is using their size. This team is 135th in effective height. Ole Miss is 271. I thought there was a chance we'd see more breakfield Dia lineups, but now that we have the guards fully healthy, they're back to playing small ball. And this is probably going to be a problem on the glass for Ole Miss. Mississippi State is 69th. Ole Miss is 303rd. They do have taller players like Dia and Brakefield could play together. They just haven't chosen to do this a lot. Maybe they do, and I'm making too much of this advantage. But it is a stark advantage for Mississippi State. On the Ole Miss side, they're just way better shooting. They're 89th in three-point percentage. Mississippi State is 277th. And this is the craziest stat in the whole game for me. Mississippi State is taking threes at a higher rate. I even just wrote in my notes, like, maybe that's why you're losing. Like, you're taking more threes and you're horrible at them. This team was barely in the top 300 at three-point shooting. What are you doing? Why are you shooting threes? Maybe they will in this game. I don't know, but they should just pound the interior. We'll see what they decide to do. On the margins, Ole Miss is superior in turnover margin. Fouls are about equal. But Mississippi State is 309th at free throw shooting, so if fouls are going to be equal, honestly, this is probably an advantage for Ole Miss. But there's a lot of many edges. As long as Ole Miss can figure out a way to take advantage, or I guess minimize the advantage Mississippi State has on the glass, which Beer's a good coach. I believe in his ability to do this. I haven't taken this yet, and I don't know why. We make this beyond the -4. A lot of services publicly have this beyond this. I guess I'm just a little scared that Mississippi State has not played up to expectation, but really, I think we should be playing the 4 in this spot. I probably will lay the points with Ole Miss. That will certainly be in our Discord. And I guess while we're on that, I'll link it below. Again, doing projections for every game and player. If you're interested in that, the link will be below. And I'm always trying to take advice and fix that, or not really fix it, but improve it. So if you have any, leave a comment. The comments help a ton. Subscriptions help a ton. We're only 951 away from being monetized, which doing this for free is a lot of work. If you've taken the time to do any of those things, I appreciate you a lot. It's not lost on me that you take your time to watch this show. Thank you for that. Last game we'll do today, I ran out of time. It's really tough to get to a lot of Saturday games because it's just a shorter time turnaround. Even though they're the best games, it sucks not being able to dedicate extra time to them. Hope I had the right graphic for that last one. If I didn't, I apologize. Clemson, Florida State. This game has a 4.5-point spread in favor of the road team of Clemson. The total in the game currently sits at 143. No major injuries. I'm frankly surprised this is this low. Florida State, one top 50 win all year. It was against number 49 Pitt. They only have 2 other wins in the top 100, 72 Wake, 90 Notre Dame. They've also racked up 4 losses outside the top 100. This is an awful team who's finally losing their coach. Great career, Leonard Hamilton. The game has just passed you by. I'm sorry. It's the way it is. Clemson has 4 top 50 wins and 1 loss outside the top 100. And that came to number 101 Georgia Tech in 3 overtimes. They also picked up a win over number 2 Duke last weekend, 77-71. Both these teams are top 25 in height. I think they do somewhat neutralize each other inside. The only clear advantage in that area comes Clemson's direction in total rebounding. They're 71st. Florida State is 164th. So, I mean, with Lock-in and Shiflin, they're just a little better inside than Florida State, but it is pretty neutral. As far as the biggest advantages, it just comes from Clemson shot making. They're 13th nationally in three-point percentage. Florida State is 246th. Florida State's also very bad on the margins. They commit more turnovers. They foul at a higher rate. Clemson's defense doesn't generate a ton of fouls, but they are 55th in turnovers forced. Just a big mismatch. I played this -3.5 when our model showed nearly -5 should be the efficient number. It's moved, but I'm still comfortable with the 4.5 here. You can absolutely play that. That'll do it for us today on a big Saturday. Thank you all for taking the time. I appreciate you. We'll be back tomorrow with a decent Sunday slate. Until then, good luck. We'll see you next time.